one of the things you can do to, once the wind gets above about 15 miles an hour, I like to use the course angle here and adjust it so that the drone is flying perpendicular to the wind, because it's a little easier for it to stay correct for that crosswind versus the headwind and the tailwind, headwind and the tailwind, depending on which way it's flying. So but that's down here. You can adjust the course angle, and it will update the so 90% of the time I fly with whatever the course angle it sets, because it's pre-programmed to set the course angle to have the minimum flight time. The only time I would change it is for the wind, or if I was doing a long linear project, because the most efficient way is to fly 2 miles out, 2 miles back. Yeah. But I can't see it, so I'll have it go this way so that I can kind of follow it along, because you never lose sight of your drone, right?
Yeah. Not supposed to.
Not supposed to. Good answer. So that's typically the only time that I would goof around with the course angle. Upon completion, it's going to return to home and land under advanced settings. So target surface to takeoff point. So if for some reason, like you were trying to do a big stockpile, but you had to take off at the base of the stockpile, you could put in a positive offset, and so it would offset that. I would, if that stockpile was 100 feet tall and I wanted to fly 200 feet above it, I would just put in above the above takeoff spot, I have to be 300 feet. Mm-hmm. That kind of thing. Overlap, so side overlap, so it's going to fly so that it has 70% overlap on the pictures to the right and left. 80, front overlap is 80%. So that's what they recommend. I wouldn't go much below that, because the photogrammetric software needs that much overlap in order to get a good 3D model. What you do have to be careful of is if you're not using terrain following and you're flying in areas where you have a lot of topographic difference, that you may want to adjust the side overlap up. So like I used to, before I came to Keystone, I worked for an engineering company, and we did a lot of aggregate work. I don't want to tell you how many quarries I've flown. And so typically we would launch it at the top of the quarry. It would fly, it would get 100 feet away from me, and all of a sudden the ground was now 400 feet lower than it was. Well, that ground sampling distance, and more importantly, that overlap, is a function of the distance between the drone and the ground. So what was fine for a 70% overlap, where I was standing when it took off, by the time we got to the middle of the quarry, that the actual overlap may have been closer to 60% because it was so much further. So in that case, there I would run it, I may make that 80% so that I got 70 by the time we got over the top of the quarry. The converse isn't as problematic, because the overlap's still going to change, but it's going to go up. So if if the ground goes up, the stockpile we're just talking about. So now if you set it to 70 where you're taking off, by the time it gets to the height top of the stockpile, maybe it's at it's 80 or 85%. It's fine. It doesn't matter. So, but increasing particularly the side overlap is going to increase the flight time, because the higher the overlap, the more flight lines it needs. Front overlap doesn't really affect anything that much because it's flying anyway. It isn't like it's got to fly further to get that overlap. Margin is just going to put add a little buffer around the area. So if you put in 25 feet, it's going to essentially offset that polyline 25 feet and map that. Photo mode, timed interval shot, that's what you want. So it's going to take a picture at a certain time interval. With the M3E, it's actually every 0.7 of a second. It takes a picture, which is really fast. And then takeoff speed, so when it's going up and down, it's going to fly again at 33.5 miles an hour. If for some reason, here, let's say in this project, up here where it says the 755.1 feet, we were going to launch it from over there, and we wanted the mission to start in that corner. You could use the set route start point. If you press the set button, you could tell where you wanted it to start. It's going to not randomly, it's going to pick a start point based on the geometry of the flight lines. But like, if it was a case where you wanted it to start by where you were gonna take off, so that you could walk along the follow on a bigger project, something like that, then you could set it. After you get that all done, in the upper right, left-hand corner, you just press the floppy disk, which kids have no idea what you're talking about when you say the floppy disk. That's the same button, Dad. So now you have that all planned. You're ready. When you're ready to fly, you just hit the play button. It says aircraft disconnected. So now you would have that planned and you would be ready to go. Typically, I would do this part in the office. Just at least preliminary. I would always kind of, based on wind, site conditions, things like that, kind of finalize it when I'm in the field. But I just, like the idea that I can sit here and do it while I'm drinking a cup of coffee, as opposed to out on the site. The client's out there wondering what you're doing, asking you a bunch of questions. So much less of a chance for to miss something, goof something up. Yeah.
There's like good apps too for Kiefer had some sort of app I remember that was basically like, can I fly this, or is it a good idea to fly right now?
There's an app called UAV Weather.
UAV Weather, yeah.
Yep. Okay. Which will give you the weather forecast, and and you can put in like tell it I don't want to fly above 20 miles an hour, and one of the nice features it has is it calculates, estimate, or guesses would be a better term, the winds at whatever height you're going to fly. So 400 feet, 200 feet, whatever, 150 feet. So it will kind of give you an idea as to what the winds are in that, at that level. Then on the right-hand side, so these are some different, you can switch between, essentially street maps and satellite. You can turn the geo zones off. So that, cleans up the view. It only turns off their display. You turn them off, it's still not gonna let you take off in the, without putting getting an unlock code for it. And I think they've recently changed that. You don't need a couple of years ago, like if you wanted to fly here, you still needed permission from the FAA. But once you got that permission, you had to essentially send that to DJI, and they would send you a digital certificate that you had to load up to the drone in order for you to take off. Now I think you just get a warning and saying, you need a permission to fly here. So technically, if you don't have permission, it may still let you fly. Good, but you're gonna have to check a little box saying, I know I need permission, and then if the FAA shows up, you're entirely right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So you wanted to figure out how to set up your
The base, yep.
Yep, yeah, so
how, the control points that you set and it flies over and we GPS those in, that's only for the post-processing, that has nothing to do with the flight or anything like
Yep.
that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And do you need, like, if I just wanted to take this suitcase home, the controller in it, can I fly that? Or, so it doesn't even really need any type of GPS unit associated with it?
No, so without some kind of base input, this right here is what they call the RTK module. So
Gotcha.
the way DJI organizes their data is there's a micro SD card in here. Yep, there's a micro. And so every time you fly a mission, it creates a folder on there, puts all your pictures on there. In addition to that, it writes GPS data. It writes raw GPS data to a series of files. So depending upon what software you use, like Business Center, Pix4D, you could bring that in there and you could do that post-processing, and then that will greatly speed up the processing of the data because of the accuracy of the GPS positions. You don't even need to do all that. So in this case here, if we say, we're not gonna goof around with the base, we're not gonna do anything, we're gonna fly it, we're gonna go out here and we're gonna set, for this year, I'd probably set 12 or 15 ground control points. You don't have to put anything in the controller related to those ground control points. You just need to make sure that you're gonna be able to pick them out of the picture and you have good coordinates on them. And then you load that into your software and you're gonna go through there and you're gonna say, for control point one, these are the coordinates, and then in 4 or 5 pictures, you're gonna, with your mouse,
That's
you're
what
gonna
we
click
did.
and say, that's that point, that's that